Salt-heavy fog swallowed the breach as the cabin burned, a visceral memory of a downed brother surfacing through smoke. When my eyes failed, I whispered one command to Gunnar, the only thing between a cold grave and light. You wake up exactly at 4:47 in the morning. The digital glow of your alarm clock casts a sharp red slash across the timber walls of your bedroom, a silent reminder that while you left the Navy, the SEAL in you never truly retired. You don't wait for the chime. Your internal clock was forged in the fires of Coronado and cemented in the unforgiving deserts of the Middle East. You are Jax Thorne, and in this isolated corner of Oregon, you've tried to build a life out of silence and cedar. You throw back the wool blanket, your feet meeting the freezing hardwood floor. The chill is an old friend, a sharp tether to the physical world. You move through the dark with the quiet, deliberate grace of an operator, navigating the cabin's familiar layout without needing a light. This is your fortress of solitude, a sanctuary tucked between ancient Douglas firs and the churning Pacific. You go through the morning protocol with mechanical precision. The grinding of dark roast coffee beans sounds like a staccato of gunfire in the morning stillness. You drop to the floor for 100 push-ups, the rhythmic burn in your shoulders a desperate attempt to silence the echoes of the men you left behind. Outside the frost-rimmed windows, salt-heavy fog swallows the breach. It is thick and suffocating, smelling of brine and something visceral, a memory of a downed brother surfacing through the smoke of a burning wreckage. You step onto the back porch, the steaming mug in your calloused hands, and stare into the impenetrable gray mist. You designed this isolation to keep the world safe from a broken weapon, telling yourself that surviving is the same as living. But today, the silence feels different. You look down at the porch railing and freeze. Sitting there, glinting in the pale morning light, is a small silver St. Christopher medal. It is dripping with seawater, the chain coiled like a snake. You don't own one, and your nearest neighbor is miles of rugged, vertical terrain away. Someone was here, standing just inches from your window while you slept. The perimeter you've spent years perfecting has been breached by a ghost. The restlessness hits you like a physical blow. You grab your flannel jacket and your keys, climbing into your battered Ford truck. You need to move. You need the wind and the road to clear the scent of old smoke from your mind. You steer the truck toward the treacherous cliffs of Devil's Gate, the rain beginning to drum a frantic rhythm on the roof. Tension coils in your gut, the familiar weight of a mission beginning to settle. You don't know what's waiting in the mist, but you know this. Courage walks on 2 legs and 4. The rhythmic thump of the windshield wipers suddenly snaps, a jagged piece of plastic bone breaking against the glass with a sound like a pistol shot. You pull the Ford over, the engine coughing a plume of acrid metallic smoke that mingles with the suffocating Oregon mist. Beside you, Gunnar, your German shepherd, the only soul who knows the weight of your nightmares, lets out a low, predatory rumble. It is a sound he hasn't made since a midnight raid in the Kunar province. His ears are pinned back, his amber eyes fixed on the tree line. This isn't a mechanical failure, it's a deliberate interruption. You reach for the glove box, but your hand stops. The silver St. Christopher medal you found on the porch is now vibrating against the dashboard as your truck idles, its polished surface catching a stray glint of light like a dying star. You step into the freezing mud, the scent of wet earth and pine needles sharp in your nostrils. Gunnar is out before the door fully swings open, a silent blur of sable fur and corded muscle, instantly flanking your left in a perfect combat heel. You follow his gaze and see it, a trail of seawater leading away from the road toward the vertical drop-off of Devil's Gate. There are no footprints, only the wet, heavy drag mark of something metallic. You realize with a sickening jolt that the metal was a tactical beacon. As you reach the cliff's edge, the fog peels back for a heartbeat, revealing a matte black tactical case wedged into the rocks 50 feet below. It is marked with a scorched unit insignia you haven't seen since the day the world ended for your team. The Reaper's Hand. The adrenaline hits your system like a flashbang, blinding and visceral. Your pulse, once a disciplined drum, now races at a combat tempo. You feel the phantom weight of a plate carrier on your chest and the ghost of a rifle in your grip. You're no longer a carpenter. You're an operator in the red zone. But Gunner's whine is sharp, pulling you back. He nudges your hand, his steady presence the only thing keeping the darkness at bay. You look toward the valley where your cabin sits, but the horizon is no longer gray. A thin, jagged needle of orange fire is piercing the mist, licking the roofline of your sanctuary. The metal's purpose is clear. It was a lure to breach your perimeter. The dream of a quiet life is shattered, replaced by a much deadlier hunt. You look at the fire, knowing there is no turning back. Your fortress is a funeral pyre, but as you move toward the flame, you remember that courage walks on 2 legs and 4. The heat hits your skin like a physical blow, a scorching wave. You reach the clearing just as the main support beam of your cabin groans, a deep wooden cry of agony, and collapses into a fountain of orange sparks against the obsidian sky. Everything you built with your own hands is being devoured by a hungry, mindless rage. You stand there, paralyzed, your shadow stretched long and thin by the flickering light of your own life turning into ash. Beside you, Gunner lets out a high, thin whine that cuts through the roar of the fire. He doesn't move toward the heat. He stands by your side, his body rigid. You look at your hands, the hands of a veteran, once calloused by honest labor, now covered in the grease of a sabotaged engine. This wasn't just an accident. It was a desecration. The Reaper's hand hasn't just found you. They have reached into your chest and ripped out the only place where you felt like a human being instead of a lethal instrument. You drop to your knees in the freezing Oregon mud, the ice beneath you making your breath hitch. For a man who has survived the most violent corners of the globe, this feeling of absolute helplessness is the cruelest wound. You look up at the smoke-choked sky, the salt fog now thick with the remains of your memories. You ask the question every older soldier whispers in the silence. Is there ever an end to the mission? You've traded your rifle for a chisel and your glory for a patch of silence. Yet the darkness still demands your blood. You feel the dull ache in your bones, the old shrapnel scars that itch in the cold, and the crushing fatigue that no amount of willpower can silence. You are a man without a home, and for a terrifying moment, you feel like a man without a god. The silver St. Christopher medal is still gripped in your palm, its edges biting into your flesh. You look at the image of the saint meant to protect travelers, and it feels like a cruel joke. You've walked through the valley of the shadow, and you didn't fear evil because you were once the storm the shadows feared. But now, stripped of your walls and your peace, you are just a tired man alone in the rain. Gunner nudges your shoulder, his wet nose pressing against your cheek, forcing you back from the abyss of despair. He isn't looking at the flames. He's staring at the scorched tactical case you recovered, his ears twitching at a subtle sound that shouldn't be there. You realize that even when the world burns, courage walks on 2 legs and 4. But then, something happened. The roar of the fire becomes a backdrop, a dull thrumming that matches the blood pounding in your ears. Your eyes are fixed on Gunner. He isn't barking at the flames or snarling at the shadows. He's standing over that scorched, matte black tactical case as if it were a downed comrade. The mud seeps through your jeans, a biting cold that should feel like death, but Gunner's warmth, the steady, rhythmic puff of his breath against the frigid air, is a tether to the living world. You reach out, your fingers trembling not from fear, but from the sudden, inexplicable stillness that has descended over the clearing. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of salt from the Pacific, and for a second, the smoke peels back enough for a single brilliant star to pierce through the Oregon mist. It isn't a dying star. It is a guide. You pull the tactical case closer, the weight of it solid and real against your knees. The unit insignia, the Reaper's hand, is scarred by the intense heat, but beneath the thick layer of soot, you see a small rectangular indentation you missed before. Your thumb finds the hidden latch, a specialized mechanical release that only a handful of men from your team ever knew existed. A soft, pneumatic hiss escapes the case as the seal breaks, a sound like a long-held breath finally being released. Inside, there is no bomb. There is no tactical map to a new target. There is only a small, weather-worn, leather-bound Bible, its pages swollen from humidity and held shut by a braided paracord bracelet. Your heart stops. That bracelet. You remember the day you braided it for Sully during a 30-hour wait in a sniper hide. You can still smell the faint, lingering scent of gun oil and campfire smoke on the leather. Tucked into the cover is a photograph. It's a grainy, sweat-stained image of your old team, all of you smiling despite the dust of the Kunar province. And right in the center is Sully, the brother you watched fall, the man the initial reports said was lost to the mountain. On the back, written in his unmistakably jagged scrawl, are the words, "The journey doesn't end in the fire, brother. Carry the light." The realization hits you harder than the shockwave of the flames. The Reaper's hand wasn't a threat from an enemy. It was a signal from a ghost. The silver St. Christopher medal in your palm suddenly feels different. It no longer feels like a heavy anchor dragging you into the abyss. It feels warm, almost vibrating with a strange internal energy. You realize then that the fire wasn't meant to destroy you. It was meant to burn away the walls you built around your soul. You've been hiding in this cabin, playing the part of a martyr among the pines. But the mission has found you again. God hasn't forgotten you. You stand up, your legs finding a strength you haven't felt in years. The mud doesn't feel cold anymore. The dying orange glow of your cabin is being replaced by the silver light of the moon. Gunnar looks up at you, his ears forward, his body coiled with a new, purposeful energy. You aren't a man who has lost everything. You are a man who has just been reactivated. You look toward the dark tree line, where the signals are coming from. The fire is out, but the hunt for the truth has just begun. Courage walks on 2 legs and 4. The numbness is gone, replaced by a cold clarity. You don't look at the smoking ruins of your sanctuary. You look into the black throat of the forest. You aren't mourning. You are hunting. You reach into the freezing mud beneath the scorched floorboards and drag out a hidden metal locker. It is blackened by the heat, but the contents are intact. You move with a muscle memory that a decade of silence could not erase. You snap the heavy latches with violent precision. Inside, the oil-slicked steel of an HK-416 fits into your palms like it was born there. A familiar extension of your own bones. The body remembers the cost. As you shoulder the heavy tactical pack, white heat flares in your left knee. A jagged souvenir from a halo jump in the Hindu Kush that went wrong. You stumble. The weight of the gear and the weight of the years crash down together. The Oregon mud is a treacherous trap of ice and ash. Your breath turns into thick plumes in the freezing air. You aren't the young lion Sully knew. You are grit and scar tissue now. The cold sinks its teeth into your joints. Every movement is a battle. The first step back to the war is always the heaviest. Gunnar isn't watching the flames anymore. He's watching you. He sees the slumped shoulders of the carpenter square and lock. The vacant stare sharpens into a lethal focus. He doesn't see the man who fed him scraps. He sees the operator. He lets out a low growl of recognition. He's been waiting for this. Suddenly, for the dog, the Oregon mist is replaced by the dry heat of Kandahar. He remembers the sand, the thunder of rotors, and the scent of iron on the deck of a Chinook. He positions himself at your left flank, his ears forward, a silent shadow of lethal intent. He knows the scent of the hunt, gun oil, sweat, and the purpose hotter than fire. Ignore the pain. Check the chamber. The metallic snick of the bolt echoes through the clearing like a death knell. You have the star, and the jagged ghost of Sully's voice in your head. You kit up with minimalist efficiency. Your combat boots hit the mud with a new authority. You aren't hiding in the pines. You are the shadow moving through them. You move past the garden and the tools of your peace. You don't look back at the ashes. The Reaper's hand is the target in your sights. You are no longer the victim of a fire. You are the spark for the next explosion. Courage walks on 2 legs in 4. The fog closes in, erasing the smoldering ruins. You and Gunner disappear into the obsidian depths of the forest. 2 predators returning home. You have a weapon, a mission, and a brother calling from the dark. But a chilling thought lingers beneath the surge of adrenaline. You are older, slower. The enemy knows your face and your home. You've found the light, but the darkness has had years to prepare for your return. Will this single spark of old courage be enough to face the hell Sully is trapped in? Or is this just the final flare before the night wins? The forest swallows men whole. Your boots press into sodden needles, each footfall a calculated silence. Gunner is a phantom at your side, his movements synchronized with your heart. The smell of the burn follows you, a charcoal ghost clinging to your gear. Ahead, a pulse of infrared light flickers against the bark of a sugar pine, a cycling beacon. Someone is waiting. Your thumb brushes the safety of the HK-416, a comfort you shouldn't want. You are reaching for the old darkness, the easy solution of a cold barrel and a steady eye. You crest the ridge, and there he is, a shadow in multicam crouched over a terminal. It's Miller. You recognize the aggressive tilt of the head, a kid who joined the hand right as you were walking away. He's the one who threw the match. He's the one who turned your sanctuary into ash. The surge of adrenaline is a familiar poison, whispering that mercy is a luxury you can't afford. The optic centers on his chest, one squeeze to end the fire. Gunner senses the kill drive. He tenses, his lips pulling back in a silent snarl. This is what you were trained for. This is what the Reaper's hand demands. But the weight of the Bible in your pocket presses against your thigh. It is a physical contradiction to the steel in your hands. You remember Sully's jagged scrawl. The journey doesn't end in the fire. If you pull this trigger, the fire wins. You aren't carrying the light. You're just adding to the pyre. The tension is a cord stretched to the snapping point. Miller turns, sensing the predator. He reaches for his sidearm, his eyes wide with the realization that he is outmatched. This is the moment. The old SEAL would have fired before the kid's hand even touched his holster. Your finger takes up the slack on the trigger. Then, you breathe. Not the intake of a shooter, but the deep, soul-level exhale of a man choosing a different path. You don't fire. With a movement so deliberate it feels like breaking bone, you flip the safety to on and let the rifle drop to its sling. You step out from the shadows, hands visible, palms open. It is the most dangerous thing you have ever done. You aren't surrendering to Miller. You are surrendering to the grace you found in the ashes. Gunner feels the shift. He doesn't lunge. He stands tall, a silent witness to a miracle. Miller freezes, his pistol halfway drawn, looking at the man who should have killed him but didn't. The silence isn't the silence of the grave. It is the silence of a new mission. The weight on your chest begins to lift. You haven't lost your edge. You finally found the right way to use it. Courage walks on 2 legs in 4. The salt-heavy fog that swallowed the breach is lifting, replaced by the clean air of an Oregon morning. I stand in the charred clearing where my sanctuary stood, but the acrid smell of burnt cedar no longer chokes me. It is replaced by damp earth and the promise of a new season. Beside me, Miller, the young man sent to turn my world to ash, is working. He's stacking blackened beams into a neat pile. He doesn't look like a reaper anymore. He looks like a man given a second chance. My HK-416 is locked back in its case. I am no longer an operator waiting for a hit. I am a builder who has chosen the hammer over the rifle and grace over the thunder of the hunt. Gunner sits at my left flank, his coat still smelling of the forest, but his muscles are at rest. He isn't scanning for threats. Instead, he's watching the sunlight filter through the sugar pines, casting golden ribs across the floor. He nudges my hand with a cold nose, a grounding weight that pulls me back into the present. We aren't in Kandahar or the Hindu Kush anymore. We are home. The jagged voice of Sully that used to pierce my nightmares has finally softened. It is no longer a scream for vengeance. It is a quiet murmur of approval. I can almost sense him in the mist, a phantom brother who has found his rest because I found my peace. The open loop of my guilt, the cord that tethered me to the fire for a decade, has finally snapped. The heartwarming moment is found in the stillness. Miller stops, wipes the sweat from his forehead, and looks at the Bible I left on a stump, the one with Sully's notes in the margins. He picks it up with trembling fingers, and I see relief in his tired eyes. He realizes the Reaper's hand never owned his soul. I walk over and lay a hand on the kid's shoulder. It's the first time I've touched another person without intent to harm in years. The connection is a bridge over a canyon of old fires. My service is no longer defined by the lives I took, but by the one I chose to save. We aren't just clearing debris. We are building a foundation. The cabin will rise again, but not as a fortress. It will be a sanctuary for those who still feel the salt-heavy fog in their lungs. Courage walks on 2 legs and 4, and today, it walked us into a light that the darkness can never extinguish. But as the sun climbs higher, I realize our spark is part of a larger flame. There are others still trapped in the smoke. The story isn't just about a cabin in the Oregon woods or a young man who made a terrible mistake. It is about the moment we all face when the world expects us to be the reaper, but our soul begs us to be the light. I spent half my life believing that my value was written in the missions I completed and the enemies I neutralized. I thought my edge was my armor. But in that clearing, with the smell of my burnt sanctuary still heavy in my lungs, I realized that my training didn't just teach me how to survive a war. It taught me how much I needed a peace that surpasses all human understanding. When I let that rifle drop, I didn't lose my power. I found a strength that the Reaper's hand could never offer. It took the ashes of my old life to show me that grace isn't something you earn. It is a choice you make when the smoke is so thick you can't see the way home. In your life, in the heavy, quiet corners of your own struggle, what are the embers you are still holding on to? Your battlefield might not be a sugar pine forest or a ridgeline in Kandahar. It might be a broken marriage, a career that turned to dust, or a mistake from your youth that follows you like a persistent shadow. We all stand at that ridge eventually, looking down at the person who wronged us, or perhaps the version of ourselves we've grown to despise, with our finger on the trigger of our own resentment. The question isn't whether you have the right to be angry. You probably do. The question is whether you have the courage to be free from that anger. There is an ancient, quiet truth that tells us the greatest victory isn't found in conquering others, but in conquering the darkness that tries to take root in our own hearts. Faith isn't a magic shield that keeps the fire away. It is the living water that allows the green shoots of a renewed spirit to grow through the charcoal of our past. It is the steady, rhythmic heartbeat of a loyal companion like Gunner, reminding you that you are never walking this path alone. Gunner doesn't hold on to the trauma of the breach. He simply steps into the light of the morning, ready to serve and ready to protect. The silence of the woods now isn't the heavy silence of a predator waiting in the shadows. It is the expectant silence of a new foundation. Peace is not the absence of the storm, but the finding of your center within it. Look at your own hands. Are they clenched tight in a defensive posture, or are they open to the possibility of a new season? You might feel like the fire has taken everything you worked for, but as long as you are still standing, your mission isn't over. You are defined by what you build out of the debris. Forgiveness is the only weapon that heals the one who wields it. It is the hardest walk any of us will ever take, but the light is always stronger than the smoke. Courage walks on two legs in four. And sometimes, that courage starts with a single step toward a community that understands the weight you carry. Stories like Jack's and Gunner's don't end here. If you want to see what happened next and discover more stories of finding light in the darkest fog that might change how you see everything, subscribe.